Blog Talk Radio.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Lori Smith on Blog Talk Radio. It is 6 o'clock here in the morning, Friday morning, May 21st. I'm really happy to be here. I'm just waking up, having some coffee, and, just trying to wake up. Glad it's Friday. Really glad it's the weekend coming up. And, I'm so happy to be here to do the show. I wanted to continue on. This is one child abuse survivor to another. And I wanted to continue on and finish up this article that I had found on the web and that we'd been talking about all week. And I just thought it was another interesting article about therapy and how to choose a therapist and the different types of therapy available for people and what seems to be helpful. And it's good for people to hear this stuff because, therapy and talking about therapy and talking about counseling and whatnot for adult survivor issues of child abuse is kind of scary for a lot of people. It is for me because I've never gone and sought any therapy or counseling, and I always thought that I should have. And we as some of the surviving family members in my family thought that we should have, but we never did. So that's the whole issue. I think it's always been an issue of trust, and also just the fact that we just didn't have any money to go and do this. So, one of my sisters wanted was thinking that it would be good to have some therapy, right? So, but we just never did. And so now, I'm doing a lot of research, and I find these articles, and I thought, hey, I should pass this on to other people. So we're on for 30 minutes. It's a live internet streaming radio broadcast from blogtalkradio.com, and the chat room is open if you want to go sit in there and hang out and just kick back and relax. This article, first I'll just go through all the housekeeping stuff. I don't have any professional certificates. I'm not a counselor or therapist, I'm just a person who pays to do my own blog talk show because I really believe that we don't hear enough about the issues surrounding child abuse. Really all we ever hear about is the articles in the paper and on the news of children being killed at the hands of their parents and caregivers. And if they're not killed, then they're in the hospital due to abuse-related injuries. And I seriously think there's that this is just a ridiculous situation going on out here in the world. It has been forever, and it's still going on. And so the whole issue is I think that mainstream society really needs to start talking about child abuse and get it out in the open. Stop keeping it all silenced. Silence, I believe, is the problem. It's one of the contributing problems to abuse, right? Because the abusers want to keep it silent so that they can keep abusing, right? And they don't want to get busted for what they're doing. So people who abuse children and, whether it's parents or child sexual predators or, daycare workers or, caregivers and grandparents and whoever's looking after children, they obviously want it to be kept silent because they don't want to be busted, and also they want to keep on doing what they do. So silence is the problem there, right? Silence is a real problem in society because what people don't know about, they don't realize there's a problem. Like if there's a problem within a community, as long as nobody knows about it, there will be nothing done about it. And so, without bringing abuse of all types actually out into the public eye, but especially child abuse, because we have to stop it because kids are dying and they're just dying all the time, and it's horrible. It's absolutely horrible. And if they don't die, they're going to have to suffer their whole entire lives trying to get over the abuse that they suffered as children. And so it's so important that mainstream society starts talking about it, gets comfortable talking about it, and starts figuring out ways to stop it and prevent it. What it's going to do is it's going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of resources. It's going to cost a lot of people's time and professionals to come into the situation to change this thing because there's all kinds of problems with this whole issue dealing with family breakdowns and people doing what they do to their children. And also it's going to take a lot of education for parents to start realizing that a lot of abuse occurs at schools, a lot of abuse occurs at daycares. Wherever you leave your child, that's where the abuse is going to occur. So, this is the whole issue. It's happening. It's happening all the time. And if you're a parent and you want to save your child from being abused, you better start paying attention to what's going on out there and realize that it is happening. And really, mostly in the family system, right? In the family unit. That's where most of the abuse is occurring. 90% of child abuse is of all types, whether it's sexual, physical, verbal, emotional, psychological, you name it, is the perpetrator is known by the child. It's either a family member or a friend of the family. And the other 10% might be somewhere outside of the home, for instance, a daycare or a child sexual predator or something, right? So 90% of abuse cases it's someone the child knows is the perpetrator of the abuse. So the whole issue is it's happening within families. It's pretty obvious, but nobody wants to wake up and do something about it, because it means Aunt Jane and Uncle Joe won't be at the barbecue because they'll be doing time down at the jail. You know what I mean? So the whole issue is families need to come together and start protecting children, doing whatever they can to protect their children. And the abusing parents really need to get help. And it's unfortunate because most of those abusing parents either have some sort of mental issue, psychological problems, which it's hard it's hard for those people to get help, right? Because they don't half the time realize that they are sick, and they think what they're doing to their children is perfectly fine, and that's the problem, right? There's a real problem there. Also, there's a lot of substance abuse and young people having children that are not prepared and not able to look after them, and there's older parents who just don't care, and they're just so miserable and downright nasty that they just abuse their children. It's a real problem. You start looking at these articles out here and see who the abusers are. It's a whole wide range of people abusing children, and it's society's problem. It costs $1.4 billion, $104 billion a year on child abuse, because of child abuse. That's what it costs the taxpayers, just in North America. That's not even Canada. I believe that those figures are from the States. So you add Canada in there, and it's just more. It's ridiculous, and it really needs to stop. People need to stop using their children for whatever their purposes and needs are, whether it's sexual, whether it's just to be a punching bag or to lash out at your children, right? That's not why children were put here on the earth, and I really would like to see stiffer penalties and stiffer sentences for parents who abuse their children, especially parents, for caregivers as well. But I'd like to see parents really do some hard time when they abuse their children, because that would deter parents from doing what they do to their children, right? And it would stop the abuse cycle eventually, right? So we have a lot of work to do in front of us. That's why I just want to be one more voice out there. I'm not a professional, and I don't hold any certificates, counseling certificates. I just wanted to be one more voice to add to all the other voices out there already who are standing up for children, for child rights, and for children every day, advocating to save their lives, right? So this is so important, and that's why I do the shows. And if you're a young person under the age of 18, you want to have an adult to okay this show. Have an adult listen to the show with you, and that way they can tell you whether or not you should be listening. Excuse me. There's millions of child sexual predators out there online at any given time, and they will do whatever they can to get a hold of you. And so if you're a young person under the age of 18, I would ask that you have an adult kind of look in at everything that you're doing. If you want to keep yourself safe and keep yourself alive, it's really a good idea. And if you're sensitive to the topics of abuse, I would ask that you turn the show off. You have to know what's good for you to listen to, and listen at your own discretion, please, because the topics of abuse are very sensitive to some people who have not heard a lot about it, or if you're a survivor of child abuse, something could trigger you, right? So this I know because I do a lot of studies and research. And I know I'm a survivor myself. I'm quite far along in my healing, thank God, but there are lots of people who are still just in the beginning stages of their healing, and that's why it's so important for people to know, to be aware of what you're listening to, and make sure it won't trigger you, right? We want to move forward in our healing and not regress backward, and so it's so important to take it slow and sort of at your own pace, right? So we'll get right on with this article, and this one it's so good. I found it on the Public Health Agency of Canada's website at www.phac-aspc.gc.ca, and it's called Combining Voices, Supporting Paths of Healing in Adult, Female, and Male Survivors of Sexual Abuse. That's the title of it. And mainly it's about, therapy and different types of therapy, whether it's group therapy or, finding a therapist. And we left off yesterday with group therapy, which would be like online groups or support groups within communities, right? Quite interesting. It's a great thing. I really like online group support, because you can get, you can join and you don't even have to give your real name. You can just remain anonymous, and it's nice to have somebody to talk to who knows what you've been through and has been through something similar, and then they might have resources and books and things that help them out, workbooks, and They might know of a program that really worked and it was very helpful in their healing journey. So that's why it's just so important to, to not suffer in silence and not to keep this all bottled up inside, forever, right? It's just really unfortunate because so many people do. I know that's what I was doing for years, and I'd only tell certain people if I could thought that that they would care, or that they would even, they if they had a good heart or something and I could trust them, then of course I would, mention certain things. But for the most part, pretty much just kept it silent. Didn't want to go public until last fall. I decided to go public with my story because I realized I was going to do public speaking, and I thought, well, I may as well just get out there and, let the public know, my story, and then when I go out to do public speaking, it'll be out there in the open anyway, right? So the whole issue is silence is really a bummer, and sitting around by yourself suffering is just a bad idea. And I just think it's so good to have someone in your life, who actually cares. And quite often family members don't, because like my family was so dysfunctional that, we're dysfunctionally functionable, right? I mean, I still see some of my family members. My dad is actually living with me right now. Thank God he'll be moving out very soon because it's been a long year, but I told him he could stay with me till he found a place, and he'll be moving out very shortly, thank God. But we don't get along that great at all, but we're managing to keep the peace. But my one of my sisters lives near me, and we hang out and stuff. But we're all very dysfunctionally functionable. We've lived in this dysfunction our whole lives. So, it's there was never any real healing from the whole issue, and it's been incredibly hard on our family, where there's not very many surviving members left, and so there's just a few of us left here, and the rest are all gone. So it's like, what do you do with that? And so, a lot of people quite often don't have support within their family, and I don't. My sister's in denial. My dad is borderline schizophrenic and 87 years old, Alzheimer's setting in, and, he's, what kind of a support are you going to get there? He's never got any help, and he's still just as abusive as he was before, but he's 87. What can he do, right? One of my brothers is still living, but will not acknowledge the family and has kind of gone off to do his own thing. So there's no support in the family, right? So, it's good. I'm so glad that I reached out and got some help, because all these hands started reaching out to me. I was just sitting there suffering by myself and thinking, that life just was no good, and I should just end it. And what was my purpose to be here? And I had so much pain in my heart, And so I'm glad I reached out, because as I put my hand out there, all these hands came back to me. I couldn't believe it. That's what I like to tell people about that, because I had no idea, you know what I mean? I just really had no idea. I feel so much better now because I have so many beautiful people in my life. And, you all know who you are. And you're probably in the chat room. I haven't checked my chat room yet. But I just love you all so much. And I thank you so much for being here. You guys are like my family. And, more so family than friends. I consider you my friends as well. But you are my family, and I just love you all so much. And so, it's great to get help and realize that we're not alone. And that, if we're having a bad day, we have someone we can talk to, you know what I mean? It's so important, instead of suffering along in silence, right? So I'll get on with the article here. Dealing with survivors' addictions is the next part of this article. And it says, many therapists believe that it is impossible to treat survivors who have addiction problems until they have begun working on their addictions. Addiction is, after all, a coping mechanism, a defense against awareness or acceptance of painful feelings or life experiences, and sometimes the only one that the survivor has at the time. Excuse me. A good strategy to follow is to help survivors develop coping strategies that will not compound their life difficulties, while encouraging and supporting them to shed harmful ones. Excuse me, my voice is terrible this morning. Survivors who are offending or who are abusing drugs or alcohol will likely have the hardest time sorting out all the issues they need to work on while in treatment. Agencies or therapists in some communities place a high priority on community safety and will insist that survivors successfully complete a course of treatment for their addictions or sex offending behaviors before sexual abuse counseling can be offered. However, it is possible to work on both problems simultaneously. Any survivor attempting this type of work and their caregivers need to make sure that there is close collaboration between the abuse therapist and the addictions counselor if the two are different people. So yeah, that's just it. There's that's the the factor, right? The dual diagnosis sort of thing, right? I was reading quite a bit about that in one of the articles I had quite a while back, and they were talking about dual diagnosis, where maybe there's some if there's substance abuse going on, or alcoholism, or anything like that at the same time as a survivor is trying to go through their healing journey. They have to treat both, because it's no good to just treat the substance abuse and not treat the adult survivor issues of being abused, and then it's no good to do the other thing and just treat the adult survivor issues but not treat the substance abuse, right? Because the person's just not going to get better. So that's just the whole issue, right? I'm pretty lucky because I got off of drugs at the age of 21, thank God. I did a lot of drugs, and I was using drugs from the time I was 12 until I was 21, and I don't mean a small amount of drugs. I'm talking, enough drugs for about 20 people in their whole entire lifetime. I'm very lucky to be here, actually. I'm very lucky that I did not completely lose my life to these things and get so hooked on them that I couldn't get off, you know what I mean? And I see these people out here in the world today walking around on the streets, doing drugs and prostituting and stuff, and I feel so bad for them because I'm like, they're stuck in a trap, and I'm so thankful to not be stuck in that trap. I smoke cigarettes now. That's my most that's still my vice, you know what I mean? And it's thank God it's legal. But the thing is cigarettes are it's bad enough, right? Because I'm trying to quit smoking and I have a really hard time with it because it is my crutch. It's what I use to make sure, to say, oh, I can get through the day because I have my cigarettes, you know what I mean? It's just a crutch is all it is. It's an addiction, and if I wasn't doing that, I'm sure I'd be doing something else, maybe eating all the time, or you know what I mean? It'd have to be legal because that's what I fight for now, and I have to stay on the right side of the law, right? But the thing is I know there's people out there suffering with all kinds of substance abuse problems, alcohol problems, and it's so hard on the body, and then it's really hard to heal too because you got this other thing going on at the same time, right? And lots of my friends actually, I don't know where they're at now today, that's for sure. And when we were growing up and stuff, they couldn't get off of the drugs, where I was able to walk away from it at 21. At the age of 21, I just realized that my brother had killed himself and committed suicide when I was 20, and he was a cocaine addict, and I said, man, my life is going exactly the same direction, and I don't want to end up like that. And I was experiencing a lot of violence with my friends. We were, quite often almost getting, busted. And it was really a bad scene. People were, my friends were in domestic violence situations, abusing each other. I was quite often in the middle of it, and it was just absolutely horrible way to live. And I thought, man, I just grew up like this, you know what I mean, with living in abuse and with abuse. I just spent my whole youth being abused, and then I'm going to live the rest of my life like this? I thought, oh my God, I can't take it anymore, man. No, I'm not doing it. So I actually straightened myself up, stopped using drugs, told the people I was hanging around with really basically that I loved them very much, but I could not be part of that world anymore. I had to walk away from it. And but I wanted to save my life. So see, I've always had a bit of a fight to live, and that's really what's kept me alive the whole entire time, I'm sure. Is this fight to live, But then at the age of 40, I was still sitting around thinking that I should end my life, and I mean that's 20 years later. So that just tells you why it's so important for people to get help and to keep reaching out and to get do what they can to have a good life, right? So important because we deserve it. If you suffered as a child in an abusive home and you just were treated so badly, right? You don't want to continue that on into your adult life. I think we deserve to have a good life, just like everybody else has the opportunity for a good life, and so do we. We have to work really hard to get it because we have to overcome, first of all, all of this stuff that we had to deal with as children, and then try to learn how to cope and move on and move forward, right? So important. So they said that empowerment is the next part. That was just a short part of that article here. Empowerment. The word empowerment is used so often and in so many different ways to various bodies of literature that its meaning is hard to discern. Essentially, empowering implies instilling or restoring a person's sense of self-efficacy. It means providing them with the tools and awareness necessary to negotiate their social environment and, if they choose, to act alone or engage with others to work towards changing the wider social, systemic, or institutional practices that may have led to their abuse, supported or encouraged their victimization, or impaired their healing journey. So, sometimes therapists, it says here, attempts to empower are actually disempowering. Feeling empowered usually comes from experiencing success and acquiring the knowledge that one is more in control of his or her life. Survivors must ultimately find their own voice, their own path, and their own timetable for change. If therapists are too directive in defining the actions survivors should take, interpreting the meaning of their experiences, or providing a narrow focus for healing work that does not fit the survivor's own cultural reference group, their actions become disempowering, no matter how well-being. So I guess, it's important that people have their own, it's sort of like not letting the therapist sort of paint the picture for them as far as their own healing goes, but just to help them get through it. And each person has to find their own voice, their own path, their own way, and in their own time to heal, right? So I think that's quite interesting to look at. It says empowering is also about building self-esteem. Survivors must be encouraged to credit themselves for their progress in treatment and recognize that the treatment is simply, or that the therapist is simply a coach or a witness to the process. And this is what restores personal boundaries and provides a clear sense of self and personal power. So that's just it, right? I believe, that right there, if there was one piece of this article that's worth looking at, it's this one here. Survivors must be encouraged to credit themselves for their progress in treatment and recognize that the therapist is simply a coach or a witness to the process. So I believe that, because I think that therapy it's not about them telling you how to behave and how to learn how to live your life. It's about them helping you and helping me and everyone else out there to learn how to do it ourselves and to coach us along through it, so that it is actually our healing experience and not the therapist's, right? I mean, it has to be our healing. It has to be our healing journey, not the therapist or somebody else's. So that's really important, because otherwise it won't be ours, and you have to own it. You know what I mean? I've kind of done a lot of self-help, obviously. I haven't done any therapy or anything like that. But I mean, I own my own healing journey for sure. I've been on it, just working through it myself, and it is a good feeling for sure, because then you've done it and it wasn't somebody else, making that sort of those steps for you. It's your, you know what I mean? But I still suggest therapy for everybody, right? I actually had people come on and talk to me after I've done these shows and say, we think that therapy is really important, so, that, and you didn't do any therapy, so would you actually go to a therapist if you could afford it? And these were therapists that were asking me this, right, in different cities, knowing that I can't afford to go see them. But I think it was just a matter of they were just curious to see what I would say. And I said, of course I would. I would definitely seek therapy if I could afford it. If I quit smoking, I probably could afford it. So that's the whole issue, right? So anyway, at some point I do plan on doing that, and I don't think it's a bad idea at all. Maybe by then they'll just tell me that I don't really need it. But I don't think they would say that. They'd probably want to sit there and listen as long as I felt comfortable to talk. Because that's the whole idea about therapy. It's not them telling you, it's what you're going to tell them, and then they try to help us with our situations, right? It's quite interesting. So we'll move on to the next one here. It says, abuse of survivors by caregivers. Persons who have been sexually abused as children are very vulnerable to sexual abuse by those they entrust with their care. Survivors typically lack secure attachments or the foundation required for psychological separateness, namely empathy, touch, attention, constancy, protection, or nurturing. This can lead them to form anxious attachments. Consequently, survivors may not be able to maintain a boundary between themselves and the therapist. As a result, they may try to use the therapeutic relationship to meet the developmental needs that went unmet in their childhood. And this leaves survivors vulnerable to exploitation and abuse by unethical therapists or caregivers. And needy clients may resort to old methods of bonding with caregivers, that is, through the use of sex. If the therapist is seen as a powerful adult, old patterns of responding to more powerful persons may cause victims to simply regress or to acquiesce to therapist demands or follow blindly caregivers' directives. So that's just the whole thing. I mean, I can see how that could happen, right? And that's really so important that people do some research before they go seek therapy, I believe, and just know who this therapist is and get some recommendations for them if you're going to see a therapist. Make sure that they are on the up and up, and we can't just go blindly walking along, right? There's a lot of sick people out there, obviously, right? So We just have to be really careful. It says therapists who are experiencing psychological problems are poorly trained, distressed, or who may be dealing with personal or professional issues that are overwhelming, may be at risk for abusing clients. Clients at risk for abuse by therapists are likely to have lived in an environment that destroyed or prohibited the development of personhood, had related experiences of depersonalization that reinforced a state of non-personhood, and adopted a surrender pattern to cope with violations, including therapist violations. So even therapists who are having problems can be abusive, right? That's why it's so important to know that people are people, and therapists, just because they're therapists, does not exclude them from the fact that they may be being abused in their own life, you know what I mean? And then turning that around on other people. So that's just the whole issue, right? You do not want to take any more abuse. I mean, that's what I say. As an adult survivor of child abuse, I've made it my mission to not put up with any more abuse from anybody. And I don't mean like we're talking an argument or confrontation. Confrontation is going to happen, and it's normal. But there's a difference between confrontation and abuse. So that's why I demand respect, because I will give respect, but I will not take any abuse off of anyone. Because that's ridiculous to be, to grow up as a child being abused and spend your whole life being abused, and then what we're supposed to just take it from everybody else all the rest of our lives? I don't think so. That's why I feel really bad for people who get into these situations. Like, for instance, my mom, she married a man that was very abusive, and my mother was abused as a child, just horrifically, and then she married this man who did not love her at all and treated her so badly, and so she went from one bad thing to another. So, she just lost her mind. She just lost it, and that's why she did what she did to me and the other siblings. So, that's the whole issue. You don't want to go from one abusive situation to another. It's so important it's probably what made me realize it, because I knew my mom was abused as a child, and I also knew that I knew how my dad was. I saw the whole thing. So, I thought, man, that poor woman, she suffered her whole entire life. I love my mom very much. She did not love me, but that's okay. The whole issue is I saw her suffer the whole time I was alive, and knew that she had suffered through her whole entire life. And I thought, what a way to live. Horrible, absolutely horrible. I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. And, that's what we don't want to do. You know what I mean? We have to make sure that we know that we keep good people in our lives, and don't allow people to abuse us, and don't get into a bad relationship that, boyfriend, girlfriend, or husband, wife, whatever, where these people are going to mistreat you. And if they start, you need to get out. Because a lot of times abusers are very manipulative. They will manipulate. I'm sure that my dad put on the charm, and that's why my mom married him, right? Without realizing what a complete abusive man he really was. And so she probably was fooled, because my dad fools a lot of people. He still does today. And so he's very manipulative. So that's the thing. Abusers and abusive people are quite often very manipulative. And so, people fall into the hands of these people, and then they're trapped. But the whole issue is you're not trapped, and you can get out. So if you're suffering in that situation and you're in an abusive environment, get out. Do not allow yourself to be killed at the hands of your partner, or abused for the rest of your entire life by a partner. That is ridiculous. It's not right. And if there's children involved, you have to do the right thing and get out for the children's sake, right? It says abuse of survivors by therapists is a serious legal, moral, and ethical issue, and a cruel abuse of power. It is also important to recognize that abuse by therapists doesn't just come in the form of sexual abuse. It can also be emotional in nature, or take the form of minimization, denial, or distortion of the survivor's experience, or disrespect. So that's why it's really important to take a look at this article. We'll finish this up on Monday next week. We've got about a minute left. Thanks so much for being here, everybody. I'm the Canada Regional Director for Dreamcatchers for Abused Children. You can check out our website, http://dreamcatchersforabusedchildren.com. And tonight I'll be on with Donna Shearer, Dreamcatchers Talk Radio. That's going to be 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's just going to be awesome. I hope that you can tune in and join us. And I'll be on again with my own show at 9:30. Child abuse prevention and human rights abuse prevention is up to us. So, yeah, thanks so much, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. And like I said, I just love you all so much. I hope that you have a great weekend and take care of yourselves. And I wish we could all pal around for the weekend. That'd be great. But we're all in different cities, so that's unfortunate. But thanks so much for being here, and just for being with me on this journey. And I really appreciate it. You guys are really the sunshine in my life, and I really appreciate it. So have a great day, everybody. Take care of yourselves, and remember to keep that hope alive. It's so important. so absolutely important to realize that there is hope and that we can do it. You do count, you do matter, and that is just so important to keep to remember that and keep that in the forefront of your thinking. Because if you were not told that as a child, which quite often we're not, then you'd go on through adulthood, you're not even sure that you do count and you do matter, right? And you do. So you deserve a good life, so keep reaching out and don't suffer in silence. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. Bye-bye.